Coach Downs moved to 38 Beechnut Street in Westwood, Massachusetts in 1958. 5 years later, he moved here to his current residence, 126 Greenacre. But evidence of his presence is everywhere. His mailman played for him in the 80s, and his neighbor across the street? Yep, him too. And while many Cheshire residents have already voiced their displeasure about the book being available here at the Cheshire Library, other residents say that banning the book would be downright unconstitutional. The plan is due to close in 2011, and taking this issue to the courts is the last resort for the state and the union, where they'll be hoping that history will repeat itself. Reporting from Cheshire, rjtravers, Q30 News. Reports are circulating that the police union declined a chance to meet with the chief, but that simply isn't true. The meeting was just never set up. But meeting or not, there's sure to be changes at this police station. Reporting from Cheshire, rjtravers, QNN. According to CBS spokesman Dana McClintock, CBS will continue to consider responsibly produced ads from all groups for the few remaining spots in Super Bowl 44. For Q30, I'm rjtravers. Renovations are not only needed for the aesthetic beauty of the building, but for the safety of the children as well.
The athletic facilities at Cheshire High School were once an attraction along Route 10 and have recently degraded into a mud pit. That's led some Cheshire residents to push for improvements. rjtravers has the story.
Cheshire has a football team to be proud of. 7-1 in the 09 campaign, they're only lost by 4 points. They're looking good, but the same can't be said for their field.
The facilities at Cheshire High School have really gone through a transition in probably the past 15, 20 years. Less monies have been allocated for their upkeep, and on top of that, we've also increased their use.
This is the field the Rams call home, but some are trying to change that. Plans for a turf field have been in the works for over 3 years, but Cheshire is still struggling to come up with the finances. As discussed in Tuesday's town meeting, the plan is to combine a $525,000 state bond with private donations that would cover the cost of the field.
We should not be appropriating anything unless we know the cost. We don't know the cost, and we don't know what the impact will be on local taxpayers. So it's difficult to appropriate when we don't know the full cost, especially if it's in conjunction with private funding, which is totally unpredictable. We really don't know how much money they're going to raise.
At the town meeting, Trafone explained to the council that last May he had to use Hamden High School's turf field for a home game because the field at Cheshire was unplayable.
We moved it to Hamden High.
You know, this makes sense on so many levels. It makes financial sense, logistical sense, safety sense. I look at this as if we're getting a world-class or a real-class facility at a discount.
Tuesday's resolution read that the town council would appropriate the money for the turf funds and enable private groups to start collecting donations. They will reconvene in 6 months' time. For QNN, I'm rjtravers.
And the downturn in the economy has left thousands of people with no job and no place to go. But the town of Cheshire has been able to keep all of its major businesses and factories open and running until now. As rjtravers tells us, the economic crisis has finally hit home for a major Cheshire manufacturing plant.
For almost 20 years, Pratt & Whitney's jet engine repair plant in Cheshire has called this building home. But a decision was passed down in mid-September to close the plant, laying off 800 highly skilled employees in its wake. As to what effect the plant closing might have to the Cheshire community, Cheshire Chamber of Commerce President Sheldon Dill knows better than anyone.
In Cheshire, for example, I mean, it's $135,000 to $140,000 we're going to lose for our town. It's going to affect some of the services that we offer. So it trickles down to us, but it's significant.
Some of these services might include road maintenance or equipment for local police and fire stations. But as Laura DiCaprio tells us, this is more than just a financial dilemma.
And I think it's also going to affect them on a psychological level, because especially during these economic times when you hear companies closing, kind of right away, makes everybody really nervous, and they don't want to go out and spend, and they get worried about what's going to happen to them and what's going to happen to their taxes.
But this is the first time Cheshire will be directly hit.
Really the first time that it's kind of hitting home, and I think that's why on a psychological level it's going to affect the residents, because it's the first time that they're not just saying this is happening over there or in other communities. It's the first time that this is happening here. This is happening in our home.
Cheshire Economic Development Coordinator Jerry Sitko explains that the last chance the Machinists Union has to keep the factory doors in Cheshire open is through the legal system.
The union is taking Pratt to court, and in the contract that the union has with Pratt, there's some language that said that Pratt & Whitney has to make a reasonable effort to come to an accommodation with the union before closing a plant.
I think what they're doing is probably the best thing, taking them to court. Actually, it was successful about 9 years ago or something, and I don't remember exactly specifically when, but they had done the same thing. They were taking jobs out of East Hartford, and the union did take them to court, and they did win.
The plant is due to close in 2011, and taking this issue to the courts is the last resort for the state and the union, where they'll be hoping that history will repeat itself. Reporting from Cheshire, rjtravers, Q30 News.
Way to watch it, Kevin. That's the way to watch it.
He's been doing this for 50 years.
All right, yeah. Attaboy, Kevin.
He's recognized as one of Massachusetts' top 150 baseball coaches ever, amassing 322 wins, 6 league championships, the 1963 Eastern Massachusetts State Championship, and the 1988 Division II South Sectional title.
I can't get them to say nice eyes. They always say nice eye, nice eye.
He is Coach Russell Earl Downs, or more commonly, Coach Downs. Born in 1930, Coach Downs went to school in Medford, Massachusetts, and played 2 years of high school ball before graduating and going to the Navy. As a medic in the Korean War, he fought alongside his fellow countrymen and considered himself lucky to get out.
They immediately attached me to a Marine unit, and I went overseas, and I made all the landings, both at Pusan and Incheon, and the march to the Chosin Reservoir, and lost a lot of good friends, many good friends.
Coach Downs moved to 38 Beechnut Street in Westwood, Massachusetts in 1958. 5 years later, he moved here to his current residence, 126 Greenacre. But evidence of his presence is everywhere. His mailman played for him in the 80s, and his neighbor across the street, yep, him too.
He took away from, when you're in high school, there's so much pressure on winning and losing, and then, you know, you're so focused on getting that win, and then, you know, when you lose and you're only 13, 14 years old, it's kind of like your world comes down on you. And he did a really good job at separating the game from what life is.
In 1958, he was hired to work for Westwood Public Schools as a health and physical education teacher, and also filled the vacant head coach position for the baseball team. Retiring from coaching in 1989, he now enjoys his role as a volunteer coach.
Because it kept me young.
But current head coach Brian Whalen knows how special Coach Downs really is.
I'll tell you, he's a big asset for the program, just his demeanor. Everything's positive. The kids love being around him, and he just brings a whole new dimension to the programs.
Coach Downs is, what sportsmanship and sports itself is supposed to be all about. He's a great ambassador for the game. He's a great person.
In 2008, Westwood High School named its baseball field in his name, and on April 21st, 2010, held the first annual Russell E. Downs Baseball Tournament, kicked off by a ceremonial first pitch by the man himself.
Thank you, Russ.
It's easy to tell Coach Downs wouldn't have changed a thing.
But I would say all of my 31 years, I mean, if I ever came back in another life, I'd love to do it again.
rjtravers, Q30 News. The Mohegan Sun is known as one of the biggest casinos in the Northeast, but a lot of people forget about the Indian tribe behind the casino's name. Well, today, the Mohegan Indian tribe announced that its Council of Elders has named Lynn Malerba as the new chief of the tribe, making her the first woman to hold that post in over 300 years. The position has been vacant since Chief Ralph Sturgis passed away in October of 2007. Malerba is the great-granddaughter of Burl Fielding, who served as Mohegan chief from 1937 to 1952. Well, the difference between the Division I and Division II high school hockey can be big. But after a very successful run in Division II, the Cheshire Rams may be moving up to Division I. Nick Johnson has more. Well, participants in this year's Relay for Life of Cheshire will run for more than just a first-place finish. As Kevin Lowe tells us, several teams will unite for one goal, the fight against cancer.